And then what DMB asked, arts and artists. I personally do not separate the art from the artist. I don't think we should separate the art from the artist. And I'm going to keep it to the conversations we've had today. One of the places that I'm going to go to, and today we're going to have this, that if his name gets flagged on YouTube, this video of yours is not going to survive on YouTube. R. Kelly, again. Most of R. Kelly's songs were inspired by the people R. Kelly abused. R. Kelly says his muses, and you know, he got comfortable enough to say his muses were children, little girls. R. Kelly would leave someone when they turned 17. He liked them young. And he would say his muse, his last album was literally called I'm Coming Out of the Closet. That was the name of the album, right? And
I have no idea.
oh yeah, that was the name of the last album. The album that got people to start, oh, could these people have been saying the truth? But that album happened when R. Kelly now started preying on little boys. He was done with the girls, now he was coming for the boys. Most of his songs came from that inspiration. In this moment, you tell me I separate the art from the artist. You can imagine how many songs that belong to R. Kelly that you sing that were actually him, trigger warning, him talking while fondling a child, or him doing it when at home there is a 15-year-old waiting for him, who does the mother doesn't even know where she is at. Yeah. So are we still separating the artist from the art? And what does that look like? We are all artists here. Most of our creations are inspired from our lived experiences. Artists are the people who earn money by telling you what is happening in their lives, and then you give them money. So right now, if I was to beat my partner up and I talk about being a rageful person who does this, who does that, who does this, and you guys are like, yay, and I come back again and I beat up, and then next time again I tell you, oh yeah, this is the kind of person that I am. I'll only speak all that thing Christians say, out of the abundance of your heart, your mouth speaketh. That is artistry. I don't separate them because artists only speak from their lived experiences. And when we talk about things like politics, the political is personal and the personal is political. I don't think in this age that we are at, you can say, I'm apolitical. You are a political human being, because if you were apolitical, you could have opted out. But the fact that you can't opt out is also a political thing. Like, we could opt out of not paying taxes. I, for one, would love that. Considering this country, I have to gawa pesa na gawa 50-50. Yeah, you guys pay 16%, whatever. I pay 50% tax. Gawa, and tell them like I'm opting out. Like, I'm not kwa hii nini mudi yenyu. Kenyans would have opted out of this country if it wasn't political to just move to another country and stay there. You see, it's you to your personal last details of life. JK telling us that, oh, I'm self-employed, but he's self-employed in a capitalistic system, meaning he still has to show up for work tomorrow, or he doesn't have rent, or he doesn't have food. It is personal, yet it is very political. It is influenced by the politics of the day. And that's why before I listen to an artist, I love to know their politics. I don't even like regrets on that. That is the one part of listening to art that I don't compromise on. I go check out all their interviews, their political stance, the people they associate with, then delve into their art. Why? Because in that moment, I'll know exactly what I'm getting myself into. If I'm going to listen to them and then I'm going to find them saying F sla, F sla, F sla, I know, like, I wasn't shocked that Kendrick did that. It's only Kendrick. Kendrick, definitely, Kendrick would do that. And Why? Because now I know his politics. I know where he stands. No matter what he says, I know where he stands. I know to him, freedom of people is freedom of black men. I know that. I know that. Like, freedom to him is freedom of black men. And knowing that gives me peace because now I know that where I'm engaging him from. And so the art can't be separated from the artist. However much artists want to say, that was me on stage and then this is me, I need you to look at the songs that artists who've been accused of violence towards people, their songs, how they sound like. We talk about Chris Brown and Rihanna, but does everyone know that every ex of Chris Brown has a restraining order against him? And when you look at his songs, you understand where restraining orders are coming from. Like, it doesn't shock you that there is a restraining order against someone, like the things he says in his songs, and you just know. So, artists, yeah. And then also, when artists become famous, and this is specifically for famous artists, when they become famous, they get something called a social capital. That social capital is why we never believed they are victims, because they become famous. They're people they've helped along the way, and the people they've helped see them as good people. But the people they've abused can't now be heard because the people who see them as good people will keep saying, but they didn't do that to me, but they were nice to me, they paid my rent, they did this, they did that. Yet their victims are languishing, and everyone is like, oh, but you know, we were free, or I always hung out with them and they were always nice to me. There were people who say that about R. Kelly. There are people who even say that about Trey Songz. Trey Songz, people just started taking his abuse seriously because he abused a white woman. And that's why most abusers abuse black women, because there is no agency. So, again, artistry is such a big social capital that mimi, mafans wangu ni ka 200. I think those are the sure ones I'm sure of. I have like 200 fans. One thing I know, every time someone ever says anything about me, when those guys get to a space, they'll defend me. Most You'll find the person saying something about me. If I abuse someone and they said I abuse them, it's the truth and they're right. But my people will be like, Babo, where ya? How? What were you doing? What did you do to deserve this? Lord, I kick people for a living. I kicked someone's face. What did they do to deserve it? Doesn't matter. I did it. So my social capital will defend me. And people hide in their social capital. Bill Cosby, same thing. Social capital. People believe him because there were people he handled with care. And then there are the others that when he got to, he abused. So what happens now? And
Also, Babu kidogo tu nakumbuka pia just on this same, kuna time kulikuwa na ile story ya abuse in workspaces that came out a few months back. I think Akome, sikumbuki then full name, share experience ya working at Capital and how Miss Mandy aliwa mistreat na alikuwa na abuse co-workers.
yes,
Then kuna Wakenya niliona prominent Kenyans kwa comment section ya Miss Mandy, and I saw Anyiko was one of them. I saw MBQ on that comment section. I think when I saw MBQ, it reminded me of ile story ya nani ya Jazz Odongo.
and what, people's politics never lie. People's politics don't lie. That's all I trust. Your politics, then I move.
It just reminded me of that situation. And na tuna understand, even Baba amesema that the thing ni people wako na chances za kureform na kugrow, definitely hatukatai. Also kulikuwa na comment ya Caroline Mutoko akisema leave white
Yeah.
people alone. Yeye pia alisema hivyo, and you can tell hizi
And
vitu,
Caroline
you can tell
Mutoko also
characteristics za watu.
has a history of abusing people at
Oh yes,
workplaces.
yes,
So
of course.
definitely should defend someone who's abused people at workplaces. She'd do it.
Yes. So in as much as hiyo post ya Mandy ilikuwa kusema nimegrow, nimechange, hakukuwa na an outright candid apology for that yes
Nothing.
nilifanya hivi, haikuwa. So that was one thing. The other thing ni hata kama kuna your friends, baba wamesema kuna social capital that you get, and also kuna personal friendships and relationships that also comes in. Na yes, naweza kuwa najua babu as someone completely different. This in any way does not nini haimaanishi that hukufanya these atrocious things to someone else just because I know you as a good person.
That's a good person. And what's even a good person?
Discard experience ya huyo mtu mwingine just because unanijua na njia moja, haimaanishi kufanya hizi vitu. Again, say these things, as Babu has said, are mutually exclusive. They can both exist. Unaweza kuwa inakuja as a good person, but uliabuse watu, ulifanya your workers shit stuff. So that is one thing that pia nilifikiria. Unaweza endelea Babu.
Yeah, and so that's why we are refusing this separating art from artists. And artists get revenues from their arts. You could imagine right now if like they left R. Kelly's music to continue. Part of the ways R. Kelly would be able to avoid all these cases was he was paying people off. And when they froze his bank accounts is when there were witnesses enough to even put him behind bars. They didn't have anything of that sort at that time. And do you know why Bill Cosby is not behind bars? Because Bill Cosby, when he confessed, he's out on a technicality. When he confessed on an NDA, non-disclosure agreement with the cops. And then the cops used the non-disclosure agreement in court because the cops wanted to close this case fast. So they didn't do any kind of due diligence. And so his victims didn't get any kind of justice. In this moment, I think, DMB, you understand why we should never ever use that thing of I'm an artist and then this is me as whatever. Like there is no difference. Your art is who you are and you are what your art is. Timothy, that his politics aligns with his art completely. I think that's why I never have a problem with him. He's always my best example. Like Timothy, that politics, and I've sat around him enough to know, like, oh Lord, Lord, his politics are exactly what his music talks about, and exactly how he lives his life. And same to so many artists, yet when they come to meet their fans, they really want to look like, oh, woke, oh, we are against this system. And I'd be like, are you against this system in the way that you live? You look at someone's politics and the way they live, and then what they create, you can make very informed choices. And then you go mind your business. Like for me, that's how I do it. Like I just check. These guys kept laughing how they were suffering through MWE. And I told them, with me, I don't suffer stupidity. I do not suffer stupidity. I go check artist interviews. I'm a babe. I'm baby. Please handle me like baby. I go and I check people's interviews. I check articles about them, things they've written, things they've engaged in before, then I listen to their work. If I do not align at any point, one thing I've learned is I have a choice. There's so many artists. There was this thing African did where he was like, too much content. There's so much content. There's so many artists I might die without even ever knowing. Why would I suffer this one person who's making my answers inflamed day in, day out? No. And that's, I think after because I was such a huge fan of Kendrick Lamar, there was a time I even had his vinyl. Yeah, like moving away from that, I think is how I even dropped out of being in people's fan bases because I realized, wow, the people I loved were actually, and mostly that goes to black men, the art they create, the way they talk, the way they push is they push for black men, which is not wrong, but I wish they just told us. Instead of saying, I'm defending human rights, you should have just said, I'm defending human rights specifically of black men. And I would want
Black
them to
man,
believe
because
and I,
as we even discussed kwa the live mlikuwa nayo earlier ya nini, what is it, Ida Hobbit, yes, ni that with that, and which is fine, ni whoever we are and our personal life experiences zina influence our
yeah.
views kuhusu
Mm-hmm.
maisha,
Mm.
and that might come in na blind spots nyingi sana. So
Sana.
yeye as a black man, hiyo ndio view yake na vitu ako preoccupied nazo. Who Babu is as a queer trans non-binary person, that ina influence who Babu is na politics zake, and
Yep.
you'll see that in their work, in their reflection, you'll see that. So yeah.
And how I even
And
engage
also
with
tulisema
people.
kuhusu, yes, definitely, tulisema kuhusu nini Timi na how music yake ina reflect politics zake, ilinikumbusha Future. I don't listen to Future, but nilikuwa naona a review on Dead and Hip Hop kuhusu album ya latest I Never Liked You, and one of the comments by the team ilikuwa that if you listen to Future's music na vile anaimba about how ana treat women, how sijui anafuck mademu wangapi, that if you even listen to him kwa interviews zake, that this is exactly him. Huyu ni yeye,
That's the person he leaves
ni
as.
one person. So, yes.
You'd realize would be quite wild people to go to Future expecting anything different, but that's the person he lives as every day. That's the person he preaches for. And he's reaching out to his community of people who are like him. Those are the people he's reaching out
Yes.
to. So expecting a political piece from Future will be very wild of us. But expecting a political piece from someone like J. Cole and Kendrick Lamar, who have positioned themselves and said that's what they're doing, is very on brand because you told us this is what you do. You live around us like this is what you are about. JK was talking about this is the part where Kendrick exposed the not so part neat parts of his life.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, I'm like, when you expose that, there's a way you do it. Maybe my artistry is just different, but there's a way you expose that. I'm not saying you crisis manage the entire exposure. What I'm saying is there's a way you leave that with knowing that there are people who first are going to find this out for the first time, right? And then there are people who live those lives. Mostly when you're not talking about your personal experience, you're talking about how you influenced other people's personal experiences. That when you're going to come out and say, at one point of my life, I was an abuser, you can't just say it because that one you're not, it's not like saying you're suicidal, man. It's different. That is about you and you get to control how you're moving if you are still suicidal or if it stopped whatever you did to make it stop, like that changes, but how you're doing it. And that I even wrote down here the references and how he was using his references, that the hard part 5 was, I know it's not part of the album, but was going to be my best part of this. And maybe I'll need to listen to it more because I noticed that like he would say different things these guys said at different points. And what kept me was why these particular people? why these particular people? Like for me, I know that is not a decision he made out of nowhere. That is a decision that was very informed. He sat down. I know the creating process, Lord. You sit down and you write. He might have had 50 people that he wanted to be the people he morphs into and say what they've said. A lot of people have said sound bites. So if it was about sound bites, he could have gone with Malcolm X, right? Who was also assassinated. Martin Luther, not that I support Martin Luther. I think Kendrick looks more like a
Your
Malcolm X
friend,
than a Martin Luther, but
your friend MLK.
no. He had Martin Luther. He had like Rosa Parks. He had like a Sata Shakur. He could have gone with anyone, but he chose these particular 6 people. I would have wanted to know the process that led to that. Maybe we might never ever know the process that led to that. We don't have a history of Kendrick explaining his pieces to that. Like he'll just say how personal this was and all that, like keep it to some deep stuff, which also is the same thing with J. Cole, like make it sound deep, which is true. It's deep. It influences and affects people's lives, but we'd want to know how you got there. So that, and then I would love to know what the change and reforms look like. I really would love to know what Kendrick's politics out of music look like, because he says in music is where he says what he can't just say. I would love him to talk to us about his actual politics, because the last time J. Cole was sat down by No Name to talk about his politics, motherfucker fumbled like no one's business. He fumbled. He fumbled. We don't know. Like that was when he admitted that he doesn't read. He doesn't need to read. But to create some type of analysis, you need to read. It's not something you can run away from. You can't just say, I don't read. And then we will leave you. Where do you get your analysis from? Your lived experience. But do you know there's something bigger than your lived experience? Because even you are a black man, but next to another black man, your lived experiences are very different. And so if you say you're talking for all black men, you're speaking out of your ass then, unless you read. You can't base it off also their interaction. You have to see analysis of how this system influences people, where this comes from. So analysis, unless you want to, you can time travel through history. That's the only time you tell me I don't read. I just talk to people. Okay, then you time travel through history, figuring out at different points of this life how this system looked like, how it influenced, how we got to be the way we are. No, you didn't. So meaning you needed to read to just find out. And that's it. And we cry together is trauma bonding. Okay, fine. I need to leave Kendrick Lamar alone. But it's it's a lot of trauma bonding. I hope I answered all the questions that were asked towards me. But for me, this I don't think I'm going to listen to this album again. I don't want to, because I have a feeling every time I type this album, I have to go back to Anti Diaries. And I love the way you've explained Anti Diaries. Oh, the different mindsets that Kendrick is moving with. It's the same way Bambi explained it to me, the different mindsets that uh,
Yes, DMB, you are right. You are right, Bana. We need we need to find a way to get Kendrick to Sanaa Kosa.
you'll be the one
You know,
talking to him. I hope he's not saying that so that I can talk to him. No, so that African can interview him. Mimi nitakuwa kwa bed
tutakaa hapo na wewe.
held and I'll be warm
Woji,
doing some fagotry shit.
babu utafanya hii video idropiwe yani on YouTube. Utaambiwa it was used as lie. You cannot, this video cannot be public.
Tell them it's a fagot who said it. Please. They should let it pass. Let it pass.